Bearded Biomed.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to an all-new episode of your favorite podcast, Bearded Biomed. I'm your host, Chase, and today I'm joined with Probo Medical, more so Hobie Sears, Director of Training and also Regional Service Manager. So, Hobie, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're going to get into a lot of different things that you guys bring to the table and just kind of go over, just because you guys are really embedded in a lot of different things and a lot of cool things that I don't think everybody across the biomed landscape knows about. So that's what my mission today is, to let them know what Probo Medical is all about. But before we do that, I love talking to biomeds. At the end of the day, we all come from different backgrounds, but we all end up in the same place, oddly, in a very like reason. So, what's your journey? Where did you start from to end up to here today?
So my journey it's long. So let's just go with that. The
I like
gray
it.
hair
Let's do
kind
it.
of shows it. So believe it or not, I just passed my 33rd year in ultrasound. I graduated from college in 1990, actually signed with a company called Accuson at the time. Later, they were bought by Siemens, and, signed before I graduated, went into ultrasound field service, and have basically remained there my entire career. Spent my entire career in ultrasound. Around 2002, after spending about 12 years with the manufacturer, this whole idea of third-party ultrasound service was really kicking off. And not that it hadn't been done before, but it was being done at a better and higher level by this time. And I decided to dive into multi-vendor, third-party, independent repair, whatever you want to call it, and dove into that and loved it. I was getting a little bored working on one manufacturer's product.
Yeah.
And, so we started diving in, taking on lots of different manufacturers, and been through a couple iterations of companies that have done well and failed for various reasons. And eventually it brought me to Probo through a buyout with another company that I was with prior. And the buyout has been great, and Probo has been great. And so I've spent really 33 years of doing pretty much the same thing, working with biomeds and hospitals, working with end users, and just fixing, the systems and seeing the development of things and how they change over the years, and having to start over and learn these new products in a different way, because now we didn't necessarily have the manufacturers on our side, right? And
You don't say.
yeah, I'm not gonna beat them up here necessarily, but we don't have to do that because we know it exists,
Right.
And so part of that journey was learning how to work on these new units, and then the organizations we work for. Well, how are we going to tell everybody else? So I naturally started teaching along the way, and I probably started teaching 2004, 2005, and I've been consistently doing it since. Both folks within our organizations and folks outside of the organization, where hospitals and small biomed companies would send folks to our training classes, always taught from the perspective of, you don't have the tools that the manufacturer has. We're going to teach you how to service these products without those tools, and to the best of your ability. Can you do maybe everything? Some products, yes. Some products, no. But we're going to teach you the 80, 90% that you can do, and you can do it well, and go on from there. So that's a little bit of my ultrasound journey. On the personal side, my ultrasound journey also interacts, as in, everybody in the 90s getting into this was young. All the field guys were young. All the sonographers were young. And the field was, at that point, about 98% male, and the sonographers were about 98% female. So I ended up marrying a sonographer. So to say that ultrasound is tied to our family is not an exaggeration. Yeah, my wife still scans today. I work, we just love ultrasound. And I joke and tell everybody in the hospital, I'm like, hey, I can take care of you in the ultrasound sector. I know all kinds of things. I can teach you. I can do everything else. I'm useless outside of that. I'm like, don't ask me to work on anything else in your hospital, because I will just break it for sure.
But we need that too.
Yeah.
So I fill the space of the general biomed. So I work on a lot of different things out in the field. And, I've had experience in some specialty areas. I've done a little bit of C-arm X-ray. I've done some anesthesia repairs here and there. Ultrasound, I haven't really dove into a lot. But, ultrasound's such a versatile device that, honestly, I can only imagine from your experience going from 30 years ago to now is so vastly different in how the technology has evolved. I mean, I've seen where they're talking about ultrasound could be coming to a handheld device someday. Oh,
it's there now. It's just the level of the ultrasound that's occurring now, but there's several companies out there that release handheld ultrasound systems, major manufacturers, some independent companies, and, they're great for what they are. A lot of it ER usage, that kind of thing, just quick look type things. But, so we're seeing things like that. But yeah, the first product I worked on weighed 600 pounds and had like 67 or 77 circuit boards in it. Most of the premium systems coming out today have 5 circuit boards and a PC, and they weigh 245 pounds. And we can talk all day about the difference, that is, but also makes it easier to learn, in some ways harder to troubleshoot. But that's another story for another time. But ultrasound has advanced dramatically. And, it used to be you go into a hospital, it was used in OB, and it was used in radiology, and it was used in cardiology. And that was it. Those 3 departments, vascular, wherever that fit in. But today you walk into a hospital and ultrasound's used literally all over the place. 15 departments in a hospital can use ultrasound. And researchers expect that to only increase. Obviously, you're director of training. You've been training. I always commend people, especially with your vast amount of knowledge, willing to give back to the younger technicians out there, because we don't want that knowledge to be lost. Absolutely. And it's critical that we invest in developing our younger technicians out there, because who's going to pick up the mantle whenever our time to go enjoy that well-deserved retirement's here? So that's kudos to you guys setting that up to give people the tools to be able to work on some of this stuff. Now, I did see that you are actually, as Probo Medical 13485 ISO certified. The level of documentation is already vast. Yeah. The 13485, that puts y'all in manufacturer league of, getting in that conversation. So what, just for people to understand the idiosyncrasies of that ISO certification, what all is involved with that? Well, I will not admit to being an expert in 13485 as far as the involvement. But one of the things that Probo had to do is we needed a group of people to do that. Like, we have an entire quality team that is focused at looking at every facility we have and not only developing those quality standards, right? But more importantly, we adhere to those quality standards. And that's huge. That's what I was alluding to. You guys are not mom and pop. You guys are quality standard. Right. And, and I'd like to say we're a blend, right? We're, we come from a lot of individual companies, and we can talk about this in a minute about how Probo became who we are today. But so we have that small feel, but yet now we are large enough to have the resources to do something like 13485, right? And to do it, across multiple facilities. And it takes a lot of work. It's work that is really worth it. It definitely tightens up an organization. It doesn't make it different necessarily, but it just ensures that you're really adhering to those core principles every day of quality. And you've got, stopgap checks. People are making sure it's not just because you say it is. You have to prove it. QA/QC. For sure. So
what let's dive a little bit more into the training aspect, because I love this. What are some of the things that you guys actually teach? So let's say I'm a brand new technician. My company wants to send me out to learn from you guys. What kind of training do you guys actually offer?
Sure. So, we obviously offer system courses on various ultrasound systems, or even kind of a series of equipment. Like if you were to say, like the GE Logic series, once you will learn one logic, you learn
Pretty
a lot
common.
about all the logics, right? So we've got those kind of system classes, and those are there. And then, but one of the things we don't actually require people to take, although we consider it silly if they don't, to be honest, is a basic ultrasound class. If you've never, if you're just getting started and learning it, we have a basic ultrasound class. Believe it, it's just one day. It's an extra day. We teach it right before we teach any of our system classes, so it's designed for people to travel to our Tampa facility, which is not a bad place to go for training. And they could come in on Monday, take classes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But we do it one day with the basic class. And we are really teaching the modality at that point. We're not talking about any one specific unit. We're teaching the tools that help somebody understand how is ultrasound different from whatever you've worked on, whether that was strictly biomed items, or even if you're an imaging person, that's already doing X-ray or CT or anything. Sometimes, moving from X-ray or CT to ultrasound, it's a vastly different modality. And we always hear ultrasound as one of the weird imaging modalities, right? Us in nuclear medicine, we're like the oddballs out in imaging because we don't look like anything else. And that's a challenge, especially when you become more advanced. You have to get to a point where you can understand to some degree what the image is looking like and how things are being perceived. But anyway, so we teach the modality. Our goal is, after the basic ultrasound class, is you have a significantly greater understanding of the modality as well as the terminology. We have really found over the years that a lot of biomeds don't understand ultrasound terminology. So we spend a small bit of time of that in the class going over various terms, just even the word sonographer to be used for somebody that does an ultrasound as opposed to ultrasound tech. Right. So ultrasound tech isn't necessarily insulting to anybody that does ultrasound, but that's not what they're called. Their title is sonographer. That's what they are officially known as. That's what they're licensed as. And, so we just want to explain those things. And then we talk a little bit about manufacturers. Manufacturers also teach their people certain terms that have to do with their equipment. And so we tell everybody, hey, if you're going to work on Philips, you want to use the terms that they use. And if you're going to work on GE, you want to use their terminology, because if you don't, and you go to fix something, somebody might think you don't know what you're doing because you don't even know how to talk about the units correctly. So those are examples of things that we do. And we do a little bit of theory. Thankfully, most people that come to our class today, it's not like what we used to do 10, 15 years ago, where we were 2 days long and we literally did math for like 4 hours. But finally, we raised our hand and said, is anybody doing math when we fix this stuff? I don't think so. Let's get rid of the math. Let's talk about it enough that everybody gets the idea. We don't focus on that kind of theory anymore. More practical things. We also dive into transducer, like inspection. How do you check a probe? We throw in a lot of pictures about the crazy things that people have done to transducers over the years. And we see this every day because we have two.
I would imagine you guys could actually put out a book on just some of the stuff I've seen from probes.
I've got a talk that we give on transducer care, and most of it is transducer care fails, right? And how things have failed, and we show all those pictures, and people love it, and biomeds love it when we deliver it to them. Sonographers love it. I speak at sonographer conferences. Not all the time, but occasionally, and they love it. I mean, they love seeing the crazy things that people do to the equipment.
So we'll get into some of those crazy stories later. I have a segment of the show where I love to just go through some. We all have those kind of repairs that are just so memorable. You love to talk about them.
Sure.
I don't know if you guys have done this or you plan to do it in the future. So I know Amy, their exchange coming up in just a couple months. They're planning on actually having training available for technicians that show up there. Do you guys ever intend to maybe, for instance, the basic fundamentals course, maybe like a cut down version of it almost to, provide at some of these exchanges, expos, give people a little bit of a beginner's dive into ultrasound if they might be interested?
Sure. We do a variety of things like that. I don't know that we've ever done anything at the Amy Exchange. And that may just be more of a...
Because I guarantee you that there's a hunger out there for it.
Right. But at various shows, I speak at lots of biomed shows,
right,
whether it's an hour long or we do a 3-hour thing. It just depends on what they want and whether they have a time slot for us and that kind of thing. But yeah, we're definitely open to doing things like that. I've got a couple of speaking engagements still yet this spring, where I'll be at a couple different local shows, doing some stuff like that.
Now, when I think about getting into a specialty modality such as ultrasound, like you had alluded to before, when you transfer from, let's say, a CT tech going into ultrasound, what are some of the complexities or maybe the difficulties you have seen people learning ultrasound get into? Like, what are some of the things that it's hard for people to grasp specifically with ultrasound?
So I think I see it in two ways. So if it's with a biomed that's coming up and maybe this is their first exposure to imaging, probably one of the things that I see there is the urgency thing, is how urgent these calls are from a service perspective and a timing perspective compared to maybe some of the biomed equipment that they've worked on in the past. Not that there's not urgency there, but in the ultrasound world, it's usually very immediate, and that's a learning curve. So we talk about that. We'll talk about that in our training classes, in that how it's just there might be an expectation that you move much quicker in that. From a technology standpoint, these guys, they can be, as long as they can learn in class, they can be taught how to do these things. And that's easily done. They pick up on it. The other thing I would say is literally taking what we've taught them or taking what they're learning and then using it as soon as possible. So one of the things that I tell people whenever they go through any of my classes is, look, you've just spent 3 or 4 days with us. That's not going to do you any good unless you go back and you touch an ultrasound machine in the next week or two. If you go back and it's 6 months from now when you finally go do your first ultrasound PM or you do your first service call, I don't think you're going to remember much about what we just learned. And so you got to use it just like anything, just any tool out there.
Well, the old adage, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Exactly. And then if it's an imaging person that's moving to ultrasound, one of the things that they always want to do is they want to compare ultrasound to X-ray or CT. And in some ways, it just doesn't work. We really encourage them to, hey, just approach this as something entirely new. Naturally, in your brain, you're going to want to do that. But the more that you just take on the modality of ultrasound as a whole new thing, it's going to not compete in your brain for the same space as the X-ray or CT or MRI. And then also they're very used to looking at those images. And now they're looking at an ultrasound image and it looks totally different. So they have to learn that. That's probably one of the biggest hurdles that we see those guys have. So a little bit different based on where you coming into ultrasound from, both easily achievable. It's really just about dedicating a little bit of time in the beginning and start picking that up. I also really encourage our folks, especially if they're at a hospital that is maybe taking ultrasound in-house for the first time. One of the things I encourage is, hey, you need to find a sonographer that's in radiology or cardiology or vascular, not only to help you learn more, because we talk about, in the ultrasound world, if you can scan yourself a little bit, you're going to be able to fix the equipment a lot more. And maybe that sonographer is a person that you go to once a week, say, hey, for 15 minutes, can you help me learn to scan my carotid artery in my neck?
Right.
Or my thyroid? And you're getting a coach inside that department that's going to do great things for you, as well as you're learning how to, by scanning yourself, how to fix the equipment better.
Right. Because you'll be able to pinpoint if an image doesn't look right based on the area you're scanning.
Yep. And that's one of the things, I haven't really talked about this too much, but at Probo, we have so many people that are vastly experienced. I don't know the exact number. Half of our field has over 15 years of experience. And there's a few of us that, again, are in the plus 30 range, and we're going to leave it at that. I can go to 5 or 6 different manufacturer machines. I could take a transducer, plop it on my thyroid, and in 30 seconds, I can tell you if that machine is imaging correctly. But I've done that 1,000 times, so it takes time. But that's one of those things, you build up this mental library of what it looks like. Now, I don't do that so I can get into a debate with a sonographer about what is going on. I do that so we can help them and make sure that we're really answering the question that they're asking us to fix.
Well, it leads back to the biggest thing with any specialty modality is the longer that device is down, the more costly it is to the facility, the user.
Because, for sure.
I mean, we all know if a CT is down, you're losing thousands of dollars per day. Just because those cases have to get canceled, they have to get rerouted to another location. Yep. Same thing with sonographers, because there's only so many of these devices, which also leads to why there's so much urgency with these.
Correct.
Because they're expensive for a reason. Facility just doesn't have willy-nilly backups just to replace these like that. So you have to be timely in your response with anything, especially when I think of ultrasound in general. I think that it's a very rewarding side of it. And I like that there's a company, like I said, Probo out there that offers solutions, not only with training, but I do know that you guys also do repair and also loaner as well. Is there a certain list of those devices that you guys care for and maintain? So the reason I ask, there's with any device, once it ends up becoming end of life, deemed end of life by the manufacturer, one thing that comes to mind, for instance, the Sonosite. Can you guys still support those?
Just like everything, there is a natural end of life period, not only for the manufacturer, but for us. So Sonosite, there are so many products out there that, some of those we can still support. Some of them we can't. On the transducer side with Sonosite, the actual transducers, we probably have much more flexibility there timeline-wise and that kind of thing. But if we move into other products like Philips, they've got, we could go way back and talk about like the HDI 5000 from the 90s. There's that's not a product we really want to go out and fix anymore. Like, believe it or not, there's a few of them exist.
Oh, I know. Doctors are just they're stern. They do not want to get rid of something that is just ancient.
And it's really, it's time, folks. It's time for those things to kind of sail off into the sunset. But, we go a product forward from that, like the IU-22, IU-33. There's still plenty of those out there. Philips isn't working on them anymore. But there's significant amount of parts there. And that's something we can handle on a day-to-day basis, no problem, as well as, their current product line with the Epic and the Affinity. And we can certainly take care of those. So it really does vary, but we basically, when manufacturers end of life things, that has no statement on what we're going to do.
Right.
And generally we're carrying that torch for several years, if not even longer than that.
Let's be frank. When a manufacturer end of life something, they're likely coming out with a new device that they have available for you to replace it with.
Sure.
And for instance, a lot of facilities I take care of here in Texas, they don't have the budget to just go out and just replace, especially an ultrasound device. But they can start planning for it. And in the meantime, we have companies such as Probo available to pick up that level of service to keep them up and running. It's the worst feeling in the world as a biomed technician in general when you tell them manufacturer doesn't have parts anymore. They won't even take service calls. There's no tech support. There's no documentation. I don't know where to point you to. This is people listening to the mic. This is a place that you can definitely reach out to, get that level of service going until the next interval of which they budget for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we have to have those conversations on occasion as well. The good news is, those are fewer products or products that are really old. I mean, anybody that's using an ultrasound system that's approaching 25 years of age. It's probably time for a lot of reasons, not even just parts availability, right? But, and then when we do that, one of the things that we do is that maybe if they have something that's that old, they don't have to go and buy their latest and greatest. We probably have something in the middle that we have available in our inventory that we could provide for them, and still a huge value, but yet has an imaging standard that's more readily in pace with what's happening today.
What would you say is the most common, I guess, middle of the ground ultrasound that you'd recommend most people get? Obviously, I'm not talking about Epic Affinity, maybe like is there a particular one that people kind of lean to that's good for right now?
We really try real hard not to pinpoint people into what manufacturer they want to be with, only because ultrasound is like, your taste in clothing. Sometimes it's what you like, right?
You'll have a doctor that just loves, or anybody in general that just loves GE products. You'll find some that just love Philips, and it's a sin if they ever even have to consider touching the other one. Right.
So we try not to pinpoint people, but and so we will just talk about modalities, aren't manufacturers in a very generic way, and sure, we see a lot of Philips, we see a lot of GE. And when we talk about things kind of being middle of the road, that's the nice thing about us doing refurbished equipment. It can be a premium product with a middle of the road price, and you would be amazed sometimes. So like for us, an Affinity, and most people think that as being very much so approaching high end and a high end price tag, not all the time. Certainly depending on options and how old the device is that we've refurbed, those can be very much so midline priced and still come with a full 1-year warranty. They look great. I mean, when we refurb something, it looks great.
Well, that goes back to the quality level of service, why y'all have that ISO cert, just because y'all are meeting and sometimes exceeding that level of quality.
Sure.
So I know we're nearing our timetable here, but I want to get into what I enjoy talking about is repairs, just because we all have those fun ones. So a segment of the show that I love to do is called Oh, the Modality. And basically, if you have a special repair that just sticks in your mind, I'd love to hear that story. Let me go and hit that little button real quick.
Oh, the Modality.
Voiced by yours truly. Thank you very much. So you've been in the ultrasound field for over 30 years at this point.
Yeah.
What's a repair that stands out to you, or a service call you've run over that time?
So I've got one where it's all on me, where, I did probably one of the dumbest things in my early part of my career that I've ever done. Then I have another one that is probably a little bit more typical for today. So I'll make them fast. Early on, I've been in the field a couple years, actually doing some work at a university hospital, let's just call it that. So a teaching facility, a lot of research done at this hospital, had to do a service call on an ultrasound machine. And this is back when we actually had CRT monitors on the machines, and had to replace the monitor. This is in a lab that's used 1 day a week on Thursday. And I was working on it Thursday evening, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, had to replace the monitor. This monitor had to be physically adjusted so you could see the image correctly around the plastic frame. So I was adjusting it, and I was probably not following the rules, and I was adjusting it with the power on so I could see where the raster lines were and get it all lined up. And my hand slipped off of the screwdriver, and I literally punched the side of the monitor where a circuit board was. So I am literally getting shocked in a research lab that no one is going to be in again for a week. And I'm thinking while this is happening, I'm going to die and nobody's going to find me for a week. So, about 2 seconds later, my reflexes kicked in and I ripped my hand off of the circuit board, and, there was a lot of blood, but I was fine. Luckily I was grounded to the machine.
To shreds, you say?
So that's kind of one of my more memorable, because that was a long time ago, and I remember that like it was, 3 days ago.
That's like a biomed christening is when you first get electrocuted.
Yeah.
That's when you know you're a full-fledged tech.
Yeah. And I think, in ultrasound, we don't deal with high voltage. So 12 or 25 volts is, kind of it most of the time, a little bit more here and there, but it's very hard for us to access that voltage. But that was one. So definitely remember that one. So another, though, that came just a few years ago, and we do a lot of transducer repair, Probo. I mean, whether it's regular transducers, 3D transducers, or transesophageal, and this is what I'm going to talk about, is transesophageal transducers. So we get calls from hospitals all the time that we've broken our TE probe. And so we got this probe, and literally the tip of the TE probe, which is where the ultrasound is created from, where the array sits, and literally the whole TE probe is designed to support this one little tip that's about 1 centimeter in length. And they had caught it in a door, and somehow the door had closed on it and it had cracked the tip. Well, it's a total loss. I mean, you're not going to recover from that. I mean,
they'll still try to recover.
So, well, they sent it to us, and I mean, we take it and we evaluate it, but we can tell by looking at it, it's over, and you're going to buy a new probe. So they buy a replacement probe for it, and we get the same call 28 days later on the same doorway that they had done the exact same thing. And we're like, what, and so, one of the things that we offer to facilities is actually a talk on transesophageal transducer care and handling. And we're like, would y'all like to have this talk? Because it might help if you put it in a box instead of just carrying it around willy-nilly. It's a $20,000 plus transducer. So that's, and those are the type of things that we see in the ultrasound world a lot, where it is, just a little bit of lack of care or momentary kind of loss of thought about how you're taking care of something can cause significant damage. And so these are very real things. And folks in hospitals see them all the time, as well do we. So those are kind of my two interesting things. Well,
the bread and butter of the technician is user error and avoidable damage.
Yeah.
I think ultrasound probes in general, I've seen some crazy stuff over the years as well, just in passing. And I think if there was just understanding that there is a certain way that you can care for your probes and how to treat them, and obviously don't put them into doorways.
Yeah.
And again, 28 days later, that's hilarious.
And the same door. I mean, that's like, what's this door got? Like, what's going on with that door? I don't know.
60% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure having you on today, and, learning about Probo and just everything that you guys bring to the table, not only for our facilities, but also ways that you can help biomeds up their game and learn some ultrasound as well. So if anybody's interested in learning more about Probo, where would you recommend they go?
ProboMedical.com. I mean, if we
simple and sweet.
Send everybody there, and they can find me on LinkedIn too, would be fine. I'll always direct them in the right spot. But ProboMedical.com, you can learn all about everything that we do, from system refurbishment and sales to transducer repair. And we even have an online transducer evaluator where folks can go there and they can put in the transducer type and the conditions that are wrong with it, and the system will spit out a FedEx label for them, and they can literally just send the probe in themselves. To everything about training and service, it's all there. And of course, we have our phone number there as well, and that can be routed. If it's service, that'll route to a very specific field engineer. We call them territory managers at Probo, because our guys kind of handle their own little area, or big area in some cases if you're out west. And they manage that, and they're charged with just taking supreme care of those customers.
And just in case you guys are unable to spell that, I will have it in the link below. So again, Hobie, it was a pleasure speaking with you, sir. I look forward, like I said, to talking with you again at the show, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on today.
Great to meet you, and look forward to seeing you in Houston. And thanks for the time.
All right. For anybody that's interested in learning more, watching more of the show, you can like, subscribe, follow on anywhere you take your podcast, Spotify, Apple, any of those apps, and I'm even on YouTube. So like, follow, subscribe. I appreciate your support, and may the beard be with you.
Bow, man.